So thank you so much, Marianne, for that glorious movement. I was torn between lying on the floor and doing it and just watching it. Both are very effective. Thank you. And thanks everyone for these questions. Let's see. See where I get, how far we can go. I'd like to start with one that was emailed. The question is, during many of your talks, there is often mention of allowing the heart to break fully or completely open. When I hear this with the whole body and mind, this understanding resonates so deeply throughout every cell of my being, revealing a breakthrough so thoroughgoing that no thing in particular exists. As if the fully broken heart is the space that holds it all. All dualisms vanish. Life's pains are equal to life's beauty. All is one. Ultimately, yes, not a speck of dust. And yet, shadows of dust everywhere. This heart wants to break fully open. But what to do with the unacknowledged realities and emotions that render the heart, my heart, incapable of being a clear and open vessel? How do I rid myself of dust that has settled in the heart so long ago and keeps me from truly feeling and being with what is right now, today? I was so touched to hear this beautiful description of oneness and goneness, emptiness. The heart, just as it is, broken all the way open. And then come the questions. What if, or what then, or but, if only. That, this is in no way to deny our wounds or our sense of the dust that may cloud our vision. But to see that it's not about having to rid ourselves of that, and then my heart can be all the way open. That is that boundless heart. We were doing a book group on mindfulness recently, and even in that practice, it's so clearly focused on sort of flipping the script. That very thing that seems like an obstruction or a distraction, if you allow it, allow some space, in a sense, allow it fully, allow it to occupy the whole heart mind. It's a wonderful exercise, because then that description of pain and beauty, there's beautifully describes that. There's this dust, but there's no one to be dusty, would be one way of saying it. And it's not a card trick, it's not at all. The sutras are full of this, like, the one that is perhaps most directly, singularly about compassion. about this boundless heart. The Kannon or Kanzeon Sutra, in one translation, pure, joyful, true self, eternal. That's just describing the heart. It's not waiting until some other time, until some repair. In another translation, it has the line, thus the pure heart always rejoices. I think you've heard me say, for a long time, early on in this practice, we chanted that at my Zen center every time we met. And I felt like, well, there must be something wrong with me, with my heart. It's not always rejoicing. There must be some dust, some clog, and then I realized, oh, it's a fact. It's not a conditional. It's not even an instruction. It's an exclamation. Thus the pure heart always rejoices. That speck of dust, that scar, that burden. See that as it is. And it's like Kongshi writing about her master who turns mud into gold. We think it's mud, no different from gold. I mean, I do think that this utter surrender, this recognition already so, was sort of bottom line for me. And I would also say that our wounds can be very powerful portals to transformation, to compassion. And sometimes it helps to sit and I think, Henry's been talking lately about the canoe of practice with that outrigger of support or whatever it might be. And if there's some kind of cycle of trauma or a deep wound, something from the past, there are some very effective options for helping us release that. One, at the same time that I want to say, well, this, this practice shouldn't be taken as a cure-all, but oh my, it's medicine. I just don't think that we need to approach it like, if I can't just sit and resolve all of my emotional issues, all of my wounds, all of my history, all of my baggage by just sitting, there's somehow my sitting isn't deep enough, then I would look for some support. I also know that just sitting can be incredibly powerful when we are willing to stay there openly and nothing excluded, nothing excluded. Like the Roshi said, until everyone is awake, I don't have an arm. There's nothing excluded. Every part of you, every part of this wide world of suffering. That broken open heart, that includes Ukraine and Myanmar and Sudan and the planet, and it's endless. But there's no barrier, there's no boundary, there's no edge. It's such a wide lens. And the darkness is really part of it. I mean, it can be a very beautiful part of it. I wanted to share, based on this question, a poem that I thought I might include in today's talk. I just didn't get there. Never know. Again, this was a gift from a student. There's a miscellaneous koan, when the wind blows through the willows, the downy seed balls float away. Yeah, trust that. Here's the poem. It's called Brokenness. Or maybe I gave it that name, I'm not sure. Wind through willows, wind invisible empty, willow just as wind, formless and form. Seeds like thoughts float away in emptiness into ground darkness. Tree becomes itself again, reborn in dark, where unbroken reality restores itself in our brokenness. It's really a creation poem. Right now. Right now. Just as you are. This happened to be in my notes next to a poem by Wendell Berry called To Know the Dark, To Know the Dark. It's short. To go in the dark with a light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark. Go without sight and find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. These are all questions about healing and wholeness. My perhaps strongest, most intense experience of that heart that I speak about when I say, let it break all the way. Was a time when I was in the depths of a retreat session and suddenly had an experience of all of the pain of the world. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, I saw it all at once. Bombs, rape, hunger, just domestic violence, all of the oppressions, all of it. It was just this panoramic, but all now. And I wept and wept and wept. It just came on so strong, so sudden, so unexpectedly. But that weeping, which was, this, on the one hand, unbearable pain in this world, came alongside this unspeakable fact of oneness, spaciousness, emptiness, not the least bit dismissive, not at all. There was right there in the midst of that I would say gratitude, even joy, I mean, it was knocked down wailing. And yet, this world, this one world, so intimate and wide. And our practice, it invites us to this, but it's inviting us home. It's not something to gain or accomplish. It's saying, this is what you are. And perhaps ironically, the very things that we feel are in the way can just show us, oh, there is no gate at all. I mean, it's reminiscent, there are a number of koans like this, but the third Chinese ancestor, Sozan, who had this, practically mutilated with a skin disease. It was so bad, probably leprosy, and believed that he had brought this on himself by his karmic sins. This is my fault. What have I done? And he goes to a master with this desperate sense of impurity. Please, master, teach me, heal me, free me from my sins. And the master says, bring me your sins. Bring me that deep imperfection. And I'll free you. I'll absolve you. And Sozan, this one who became the third ancestor, goes and looks, or maybe he has looked and looked and looked for the real source. What is this? And he can't find it. Look into it deeply. This gap, this wound, this imperfection. I've searched and searched and cannot find. That's it. So many stories like that, where that turning word is a turn right into this body, exactly as it is. And then, of course, we take up the Eightfold Path. We try to live in ways that are loving and healing of self and other. But it's from this fundamental clarity that there is no place for dust. There is none. This was the most beautiful description. So clear. Trust it. See, that is a never ending, but that wide open heart. I suddenly remember the wonderful German man who built this hospice and retreat center, and it thrived for decades. It's still going on. He died during COVID. I mean, during the time when we couldn't all be together. And right before last time I saw him, he's the one who said, out of the midst of a bunch of confusion, he had advanced stage Parkinson's. So it was kind of gibberish. And suddenly he said, the purpose of life is to make the borders go away. Or to see that they never were there. I would love to hear you speak more toward Kensho integration. I have experienced Kensho, During your teishos, it is as if time, past and future dissipate. I am right there again. However, I am wondering specifically how often it is considered beneficial to think back to this memory. Could I use it like a koan, or is remembering or almost reliving the Kensho taking me away from the present moment? Should I just sit with Mu instead and let go of the Kensho? There's a lot going on here. Kensho is always only now. The memory can be quite strong. And, you know, the most beautiful thing, you can count those experiences, and it depends how we take them. I mean, if it's something that you're sort of framing on the wall, like Kensho, that's really detrimental. You know, wipe it away, let go of that. I mean, it's gone. It's gone. The memory, to the extent there's a memory, that's right now. That's right here. But trying to hold on to it or construct it or create it turns it into an idea, into a concept. So, you know, the koans often talk about how it's better to throw away emptiness and everything, and with a tight fit, never to let the wind pass through. You know, wonderful to see this, life-changing. It's true. But what about now? I think the best way to integrate Kensho is koan training. Incredibly helpful. If you don't have a guide for that, sitting with Mu until you do is a great idea. And just trusting the moment, the absolute moment. This, you know, our experiences come and they deepen, they get clearer, they open up. But it's always only now. If you start to feel like you're reaching for something, that's a concept. And that will actually kind of crust over the living experience. That's okay, because it's just now. But I think that koan training is really helpful in this integrating and seeing ever more clearly. Here's one. Thanks. Your talk left me feeling nourished and inspired. There was a shift in my perspective on the fact that life is not our own. It is the child of countless beings. That's a quote. It was so wonderful to learn that Kongshi was able to remain authentic to who she was while still serving others. Her right action and skillful means showing her that self-other are one. Are there other examples that you can share as to how our life and practice are in the service of self/other? And those are written with capitals. I don't know. I guess you could probably see these in the chat. Oh, that was a direct. You know, first of all, it was for her the sadness at every opportunity to do the thing that was most in her heart. She had to face that, you know, live it, somehow integrate it, and then find the practice that she loved so much right where she is. You know, it's pretty hard to keep someone from practicing when it's your heart's desire. And for Kongshi, caring for her parents, caring for her brother, caring for the bathhouse, folding the towels. Yeah. In addition to the writing that she did. But she managed to really see that our life is our practice. You know, the very thing she wanted to ordain and go into a convent, life denied her that, and she accepted and turned it into the opportunity for the most genuine kind of practice, which is always serving self and other. It wants to serve. Sambo Zen, which is the root of tradition at Mountain Cloud, is a lay tradition. We don't wear robes, it's not monastic. Our abbot is a very busy businessman. And everything he does is a kind of serving. And it's inspiring to see how he devotes, he has this frame of sitting around every day, rigorous sitting, and then plunging into work. And it's not like there's a line for him between when he gets up off the cushion and changes out of his robe or whatever into the business suit. He's a great example of this. I remember telling him years ago when I had it wasn't a high-powered a job, but an all-consuming job. And I had this privilege of being there and working with him for a few weeks, and told him I just wanted to quit my job so that I could devote my life to practice, learning how to teach and practice. And he just said, I think your job is good for you. I was like, this is my big lament. Oh, it's good for you. I trusted him. I think it was. And then there's wonderful examples throughout the tradition, like Huineng, the sixth Chinese ancestor, very important. As a young man-child, he hears this line from the Diamond Sutra, dwelling nowhere, mind comes forth. And he's just struck by it. And he's illiterate, impoverished, gathering firewood to support himself and his mother just so they can have a meal, selling it door to door. And he asks, where can I learn about that? And he's told there's this monastery up there, and somehow they're able to arrange for the community to care for his mother, and he takes off and he goes to the monastery. And the abbot says, you're illiterate and you're from this part of the country that, there aren't any Buddhists down there. and this boy says, well, Buddha nature doesn't know anything about that. It doesn't have any kind of divisions or separations. Not in Buddha nature. How could it? And so the abbot permits him to work in the rice shed. So he becomes the successor, but he's known as layman Huineng, this lay person, this boy who's just been sifting rice, cleaning the rice, and when he can, picking up some teaching here and there. Not allowed to sit in the zendo, sit with monks. And he turns that mud into gold. Just because, I guess, trusting your own heart. There's one other example that came to mind right away, which was Chiono, this woman. There's a beautiful image many of you will have seen where she's walking along at night with her. She's a servant at a monastery, and it's a night with a full moon, and she's got this bamboo bucket that she has patched and mended and patched and mended, and she fills it with water from the well and starts her way back to the monastery. And she gazes down at just a moment and sees the reflection of the full moon in the water in the bucket. And then suddenly the bucket, it just falls. The bottom gives way. It all gives way. That moon disappears. She disappears. Servant woman. You know, I'm a little troubled right now because whatever it is we do in our lives, this practice more and more impels one to serve. So it's not that you have to be a servant or even have to be a layperson. Whatever it is, you're serving. The Dharma wants to serve. Thanks for this day of shared practice. Every single thing holds all things, and empty, but everything functioning. That must be true for time too. During Zazen, the experience and sense of time sometimes disappears, gone. But after 25 minutes, the bell still rings, right on time. So how to understand and work with time? And as a practical matter, when meditation is deep, timeless, is it wise to ignore the clock or bell and just keep sitting? Yeah, that's so beautiful. Indeed, our experience of time in sitting and off the cushion as well, this immediacy that has no edge. It's just now. So there's no like then and to come. It's just now. I mean, what is time? Dogen calls it time-being. You know, you are time. If there's anything like time. Wonderful to taste it. This is you can practice just while sitting, this immediacy, this nowness. And it can become so riveting that it's just, you know, whatever comes up, it's just not a problem. It's now. Then about this sitting on when you're, you know, deep repose and this timeless repose, and the bell goes off, I would absolutely allow yourself to keep sitting if you're so inclined, as long as you don't, you know, mindful not to hurt your body. I don't mean that as a warning, but just an invitation to, you know, notice that, find that balance. But it's not uncommon at Mountain Cloud when we do sit together, for someone to be deep into sitting and just to, you know, when we get up for Kenhin, several people will often just remain sitting. If you do that, though, you want to be sure that you can comfortably remain for 2 periods. You know, I mean, it's fine to have a little shift, but you know, it's not so considerate to go ahead and sit through Kenhin and then need to get up. When you're home alone like this, you know, the timer is not so significant. I think the one way it's significant is to set a timer, say you have 25 minutes, and then time is off the table. There's not a moment like, am I done yet? You know, that's just not a concern. So really, what lovely questions. Hearing Kangxi's story this morning, perhaps particularly after news this week around the leak of the Supreme Court decision, had me feeling so frustrated. Over and over, her own deep longings were frustrated. Over and over, men dictated what she could and could not do. Yeah. She had to wait for all of them to die before she could do what she wanted. To what extent are women today supposed to still accept or allow men to determine our choices? I don't mean with respect to reproductive freedom. I feel this frustration in so many other places. How do I accept this as what is? What does that mean? Can you provide some guidance on how to work with this? Constructive anger, energy for change. And I wouldn't just, it's one thing to say, these are the conditions and look straight at it. We're in a country right now where a minority, but is trying to turn this culture back about 50 years. And we're seeing the beginning of it. And we need to act, really. So what kinds of action for change, positive action for change, can this frustration stir in you so that it's creative, that there's that energy and not just a contraction, which would be so understandable, that contraction. But wow, when you can see it, allow it some space, release it, then this energy comes to, find out how to get involved. What's yours to do? The world is so broken in so many ways, and I think we need to bear witness. And then also, it's not enough just to watch the evening news. I feel drawn to that now. Like I just need to do it. I need to see it. And I'm look for things that I can do to offer support in ways that I think could help those who are right in harm's way. And I don't mean just fighting, but having lost everything, fleeing. And there's so many different ways this gets expressed. All the women who will die in our country if abortion is illegal would be, that's really what's tugging at you. There are very clear ways to let your voice be heard. And finally, I would say, ground your life in sitting, so that whatever is yours to do comes from this wellspring. Actually of service. Energy. But it's not, it's wonderful. It's, I say no. But it's a different kind of opposition. It's a powerful yes, And then I offer myself for that. And with that comes also that wider lens where there's some compassion and perspective on what got us all into this mess, and how culpable we all are, how these three poisons, greed, anger, and ignorance, or aversion, want, lack, aversion, just want things to be different. We've all got those toxins in us. And it's very helpful, essential, I think, to recognize that in order then to, with a kind of fearless humility, do what we can to repair the world. Yeah, so I really feel that our shared practice is a strong gesture in that direction. That it's inexhaustible, this wellspring, and it matters. So thank you so much for your questions, for taking this day to be together. We'll take a few-minute break and have one final round of sitting.